Neal, so you wrote the special counsel regulations. Just explain how going to Merrick Garland may not even be the thing that Trump thinks it is.
Yeah, I mean, it's very clear that Trump is trying to do this last-ditch effort. It's the kind of thing you do right before you think you're about to be indicted. And it is likely, almost certainly going nowhere, Nicole. So the special counsel regulations were drafted to make sure that someone independent would investigate high-level, like presidential wrongdoing and the like, someone who wasn't appointed by the president or the opponent of the president or something like that. And that is what Jack Smith is operating under. And those regulations provide that Jack Smith is to have day-to-day independence and his decisions to be accorded great weight by the Attorney General. So the Attorney General can overrule it, but there's a very high standard. Here, Garland has already signaled that he believes Jack Smith should basically make these calls. He'll only jump in if something is egregiously wrong. And that's what he did, for example, in the Durham investigation, another special counsel appointed under similar authority. And Garland, even though, Durham was going off the rails in 10 different directions, just let him, go on and conclude his investigation in the way he saw fit. Durham tried to bring 2 prosecutions against individuals. Both of those fizzled in front of the jury, which is an amazing thing to have an 0-2 loss in front of, federal juries. If you're a criminal prosecutor, that's almost unheard of. But nonetheless, Garland had a hands-off approach. So I expect a hands-off approach here. And basically, I also think that's what Donald Trump himself is thinking. I mean, if you were a serious lawyer and you wanted to have a meeting with the Attorney General, the way to do it is not write this letter, which is all about Hunter Biden and being treated unfairly and this and that, and then giving it to the press right away. That's not conducive to the kind of serious Justice Department meeting that would, otherwise take place.
I want to press on something you're pointing out about what Durham put in his own words in the Durham report. He makes explicit that Merrick Garland didn't interfere in any way with any charging decisions or any aspect of his investigation. Is it your sense that that is now to be understood as the Merrick Garland standard when it comes to special counsels?
Absolutely, and I think that's what the Attorney General Garland said when he appointed Jack Smith as well. And it makes sense. That's the way the regulations were envisioned. You have 2 different possible prosecutors here. You have one guy who's independent, who's not political. He wasn't named by a president, either the president's party or the opponent's party. And you've got another guy, the Attorney General, Merrick Garland, who is a presidential appointee. Now, he's had a long tradition and long-standing reputation in Washington of being bipartisan, of being a careful, respected jurist on both sides of the aisle. But nonetheless, he's a political appointee. So as between those two, when we're talking about something as sensitive as do you indict a former president, it would make all the sense in the world that that's a Jack Smith determination. And that's what Donald Trump's afraid of. He's afraid of actually having someone independent do this. If it's someone political, at least he can trash it as being political or this or that. So this is Trump's worst nightmare.
But before Jack Smith was Trump's worst nightmare, Carol, a man named Robert Mueller was his worst nightmare. And when I said that we've been here before, these were all the times he tried to meet with Robert Mueller. Let me show you.
Are you going to talk to Mueller?
I'm looking forward to it, actually.
Would you like to testify to Special Counsel Robert Mueller, sir? Thank you.
I would love to speak. I would love to. Nobody wants to speak more than me. In fact, against my lawyers, because most lawyers, they never speak on anything. I would love to speak because we've done nothing wrong. There was no collusion with the Russians.
He's been under scrutiny for so long. We know how he acts when he feels that something is getting close to him. He still believes, and the fact that one of his defense attorneys quit last week is evidence of it, that he's his best counsel. And I thought in this letter there was a real echo of how he wanted to handle Mueller himself.
Absolutely, Nicole. I'm so glad that you flashed to January 24th, 2018. It's a memorable day for me because we didn't know at the time when Donald Trump sauntered down to John Kelly, his chief of staff's office, to do an impromptu remark about how much he wanted to meet with Robert Mueller, that he had just met with his lawyers minutes before, and he had agreed with them that there was no way he was going to sit for an interview with Robert Mueller. So,
it's when they go to Mueller, right, and ask for written responses. I think that's when that negotiation.
It's fairly, very fairly close, but it's very soon after they cancel the helicopter that's going to go to Camp David for the planned interview. So it's just, to me, this moment connects with the moment you are so perfectly zeroing in on today. Donald Trump is the master in his own mind of the legal strategy, but more importantly, the communication strategy. And he is the guy who has decided, Neal pointed this out beautifully, he's decided, I'm going to break my own news. It's unjust and outrageous and unfair that I'm being investigated. I asked the Attorney General for help because I kind of know charges are looking like they're likely. We've been hearing, by the way, at the Post for weeks now that this case is nearly cooked and that it's expected that there will be some charges. Those, as far as we know, have not gone to the Attorney General yet, but it's looming, and Donald Trump knows that too.
Do you have a sense, because it sounds like from this letter going last night that they may have a sense of the timing? Is it days, weeks?
I wouldn't be so bold as to suggest. I've had sources who have an insight into this world who've said they think it's weeks, but I don't think that we can say for sure. And, you know, there were some people who argued that Labor Day was the final day for a possible charging decision because after that moment, Jack Smith and, by extension, the Attorney General get into a very heated political calendar.
Right. It's a political year for sure.
Yeah.
Neal, do you want to jump in on the timing of that as someone who understands sort of the procedural schedules and what would happen after charging decisions made?
Yeah, I mean, I think Carol's right. We don't know. And, you know, it is a black box. It does look like most of the investigative steps are concluded now. And generally, the Justice Department rule is you bring a prosecution when it's ready, and you don't really look to external influences or things like that. And so, you know, my expectation is that this is going to be soon, that is what signs, you know, the scope of the investigation, how it heated up in the last few weeks. You know, the Wall Street Journal story, which broke some of this, said there's still some investigation left to be done, but I suspect it's not much. Now, there's a caveat because, like in Georgia, for example, the prosecutor said there, Fani Willis, indictments were, quote, imminent. And then there was a snafu that was hit because it looks like some of those defendants are represented by the same lawyer and not necessarily getting all the attorney representation that they're entitled to get conflict-free. So that delayed things. So you can always have a delay. But I think Carol's absolutely right that, you know, the Attorney General is also thinking about the clock, not just the election clock, not just the campaign clock, but also the election. And if a Republican wins, say it's DeSantis or something like that, they may try and pardon Trump and avoid these charges. And so you really want to try and get this to a jury so that you have a final record of what the jury thinks happened before the prosecution might otherwise be truncated. So I think they're facing that clock as well.